Hey, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Dana, and I will be your host. And my guests today are Chris Lambert and Gayle Parker. Hello, Chris and Gayle. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How you
Good,
doing?
thank you.
Good, good, good. So before we get started, why don't you guys take a minute and just tell us a little bit about yourselves, where you are, what you do, all that kind of good stuff.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Chris Lambert. I'm one of the co-directors, along with Gayle and two other people at Data Sense over here in the UK. I'd love to say it's the sunny UK, but we're in the middle of autumn, and it's a typical, as most people will know, UK autumns, grey and wet. So I look after the IT support side of the business. We focus on, from my side of it, focus on IT support, so maintaining systems, and the cybersecurity side of companies, so making sure that they're secure and that hopefully they'll take on board what we're saying and the staff will get trained and be a bit more cyber aware.
All right, perfect. And how about you, Gayle?
Yeah, my name's Gayle Parker, and I'm a qualified international privacy professional, which means I look after things like GDPR in this country. And I also advise clients on other data protection legislation like PECA, or Privacy and Electronic Communication Regulations. So I work a lot with small businesses who either have no idea where to start with it or didn't even know it existed, which is still quite a thing over here, and
Mm-hmm.
really help them to understand what they need to do in order to get their businesses compliant with the legislation, because it is law, it's a legal requirement. And also, it's good business sense as well. Looking after people's data and making sure it's well cared for is and does give confidence to clients and stakeholders alike.
Yeah, and that's what I always try to tell people is that this isn't just, oh, nobody cares about our data, but I bet your customers and your clients do if it winds up in somebody else's hands. So these are just good business practices that we all need to start taking a look at. So I'm excited to get the UK perspective on all this. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about small businesses and cybersecurity in the UK and how that is being handled. So our first question is going to be, how are businesses in the UK dealing with cybersecurity?
Well, I think probably much the same as a lot of businesses around the world. From the smaller aspect, the one-man bands, the kind of micro, as we define over here, micro businesses, they're not. They think it won't happen to them. We've run into this a lot with clients and potential clients where they think just because they're a team of two or three people that they're not going to be a victim of a cyber attack, which of course, as we all know in the industry, that's completely the opposite. If you're not invested into it, then sadly it doesn't help you when the criminals come knocking at your door and just walk straight in, really.
Mm-hmm. Well,
But
what's
I
very
mean,
interesting too
we
is I was curious. Go ahead. I was just going to interrupt, but go ahead.
no, no. I said we do have myself and Gail, we do sessions quite a lot to help companies. We do training, things like that, and there are various organisations around the UK. We have regional cyber resilience centres. Certainly in Northamptonshire, which is where we're based, the local police force have a cyber forum. I think it's in fact, it's this strange of this coming Friday, it's the third Friday of each month, where we get to sit down, hear what's been reported to the police, which is great for us because we can then feed that back into our client base. As it helps keep them aware, whether they actually get around to reading the emails in due time is another thing, but it's helps us push out that information.
That's great that you get that information so quickly, because that's the thing is as soon as we hear about these scams or whatever it is, cyber attacks, that we can then share them with other people, then the better off everybody else can start protecting themselves. And the more we start talking about all this and sharing different stories that we all hear, the better off everybody's going to be, because this is a whole new, I know it sounds silly saying it's new, but everybody is still kind of adopting to, what do we need to do to protect ourselves with all this stuff. So that was really, really good. All right. So our next question is going to be, so what kind of programs? Because I know all around the world, there's different programs and different things for different countries. So let's share a little bit about what's going on in the UK.
Okay, well, I'll take this question from a data protection perspective, because obviously the two are very closely interlinked. And in the UK, there is the Information Commissioner's Office, and they have now and only recently published a series of training videos for people to watch. And as Chris and I know, the biggest thing that people can do to protect their businesses is to train staff. And still, I think the government published a survey a few weeks ago which said that 39% of small businesses had been subject to a cyber attack. 83% of those were phishing attacks. But if you ask your average office worker what a phishing attack, they'll have a vague notion of what that means. But if you can really educate people, and I work with businesses all the time, and there are always those few people within the office who are repeat offenders as well. So things like the ICO and also the government cyber arm, they have all these videos available for small businesses to watch and educate their staff in what to do and what not to do. And I think the message is getting through slowly, but every week we get calls from clients because somebody clicked a link and it's resulted in a massive data loss in some shape or form. So there's certainly training out there. Obviously, companies like us are doing quite a lot of these types of events where we're either at face-to-face or networking events, and it's raising the awareness and getting the message out there as well. And I think a lot of people are starting to realise they need to do something. And trying to get that message across quite clearly and succinctly and jargon free is the thing, because quite a lot of people are quite scared of tech, I think.
So here's a quick question. So have you seen any of those videos?
Yes, well, I've watched the ICO ones.
Yeah, how are they?
Well, I think they're quite dry, if I'm being honest. And one of the things I do specifically within data sense is I've created a training session that is quite lively, interactive, and done in the style of a pub quiz. So it means that, it's a particularly dry subject. I'm not going to lie. So by making it a bit of a competition, it's amazing. And we actually have, I'm going to show you one of these now. So everybody can win the GDPR Championship Cup if they win the competition, and it does really help people to engage in what is particularly a dry subject.
Well, I'm so happy to hear you take that point of view and try to make it a little bit fun, because you're right, it is so dry, and that's what we need to take into consideration is that we're torturing people by having them watch this stuff and just sit there for hours on hours watching this, and like all they're thinking is, when is this over? That's it. So if you can add a little fun like you did, that's fantastic. So good for you. That's great. Happy to hear that.
Today, almost everything is connected to the internet. If it's connected, it should be protected. Cavalon is the easy button for privacy and security protection from privacy violators and cyber threats for both homes and small businesses. Set up Cavalon in less than 5 minutes. There's no software to install, no devices to buy. Easy, affordable, reliable, and comprehensive privacy and security protection. Protect every device from hackers and phishing emails, and protect everyone's privacy from big tech companies and spying apps. To find out how to protect your home and small business, please visit getcavalon.com.
All right, so our next question is going to be, so what are the most common threats that you see with the clients and the SME businesses? Who's going to answer this one?
Well, I'll field that. I'll take it on, because I'm normally that first point of contact. The most common threats is probably the phishing attacks. It's easy to target a member of staff. With the great things of LinkedIn, which is obviously how we originally connected. You've got all that information about the people. You start building up a social engineering picture of an individual you want to target within a company, and then you start they call it spear phishing. So it's more targeted rather than a generic email. But we dealt with a client a couple of weeks back. It's now a client, they weren't at the time, where for the second time they'd been a victim of a phishing email. Clicked a link, put in their username and password, didn't have two-factor authentication turned on. That then gave the cyber criminals access into their SharePoint system, the end user, or that user's OneDrive and their email accounts. Now, this was an accountancy practice, quite a big one locally. So within that email account was email addresses for current members of staff, clients, in fact, ex-members of staff as well, plus things like bank statements, financial transactions, and bank account details, which included company name, account number, sort code, everything you would need to start, trying to scam those people at the other end of it. And it did then actually initiate from that one breach, somewhere between 3,500 and 5,000 emails were sent out. Again, all phishing to everyone who was in that contact list and everyone who's had an email address within an email. And that's one user within a company.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with a client a little while ago who had a man in the middle attack with a phishing element to it. And they basically, somebody clicked on a link and inputted their details. So they got hold of one of the email addresses and they monitored the traffic for a while. And they managed to basically clone how they exchange bank details for really big project work. And then they set up a separate email address that looked very similar to the one that everybody else was using. So from that, they were able to get 1.3 million pounds transferred to the wrong bank account by a public authority as well. So I think the messaging, it not only needs to be for small businesses, but local authorities here as well.
Yeah, and it's crazy when they can do that, that whole social engineering and watching and using the same wording and the same look and the feel of an invoice, and that happens a lot. And once that money is sent out, goodbye. There's no getting it back. And like you said, that was a lot of money for something like that to happen.
Mhm.
And you know what? It's the the Monday morning quarterback, when you go back and you look at, oh, there was one little letter off on the email address, but when you're not looking and things just look kind of the same, that's when we fall victim to some of those things. And I say that if we really just did a couple of things, if we did phishing and social engineering training for employees,
Yeah.
and we ensured 110% the backups, the data backups were being done. Just those three things would really, really help us protect ourselves from a lot of craziness and restoration of getting back to, where you were, if God forbid you are part of a ransomware attack or something like that. So, well, it's great to see that you guys are working with this. Now, does the government help out with anything financial to some of the companies over there, or is it all on your own?
It's all on your own, and I think one of the biggest issues as well is getting qualified people into the industry. We were recently part of a government survey. They obviously recognise this, but getting the right qualifications and getting people in the industry is a big driver here. We've got massive employment which is great, but there's no room for getting more people into that sector. So we're really struggling to get hold of qualified staff to do this type of work with people. But there's no real grants or anything available for people to do this.
I asked because I know in Canada they have some really good programs. I think it's up to $10,000 for each small business to put some kind of plan into place. So that's what I was wondering over in the UK. And that whole labor shortage in the cybersecurity world, that's a worldwide problem that we all have. And this is a new plan that we have to put some kind of journey or trajectory for young kids in high school to say, okay, look, this could be a very good path for you. And I think sometimes, these poor young kids go to an interview and they say, well, we need 5 years experience. And they're thinking, well, I just graduated from school, so of course I don't have 5 years experience. We need to get over that and start embracing to take them under our wing to teach them so that they can get into this, because this problem is only going to grow and this industry is only going to grow. So we need to really take into consideration exactly what you're talking about, that we need some more.
And they have started something, because we have something called an apprenticeship scheme in the UK, which is a really good way of getting those people straight from school into a certain sector. And up until now, cybersecurity hasn't been a particularly big focus, but they are now starting to do that and throw some money behind it. So I think there is at least one apprenticeship track that you can take, which is a cybersecurity focused one, which absolutely. But the trouble is that it's going to take a few years to embed into the marketplace, and yes, who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
Yeah, right. Who knows?
Yeah,
Nobody knows.
The other side of it is that there's also a big push to get more ladies into cybersecurity. So they're pushing for high school graduates to go, particularly obviously females, for this scheme to go into cybersecurity. It's like everything IT. And I know when I was at college, it was exactly the same back in the 90s. It's heavily male driven. So it's great to see that drive to get more ladies into the industry as well, because it will just help then release that barrier and again push the recruitment side of it.
Absolutely. And, I always like to point out, too, there's also a non-technical side of cybersecurity that has to do with the human aspect of doing the training, which is, I don't want to say it's common sense training, because it's really not common sense. But once you learn it, then it is just kind of, making sure you're using that part of your brain again for the awareness and thinking differently when you're looking at different things or listening to someone on the phone. Does this sound like, who this really is? Or, would somebody be asking me for my login credentials and all that kind of stuff? So you're right. There's many, many different aspects of this for the men and the young women to get involved in. And I agree. Of course, I want more women to get involved in this, because there are not a lot at all in this world. So this was really, really helpful. So does either of you have anything else you want to throw out there as far as anything else that's going on there in the UK with the cybersecurity?
Yeah, I'll chuck in one of the other things that the government, they don't, in terms of they back it and it's in a government scheme, but they don't give you any financial help towards it. We run something called Cyber Essentials. It's just anyone can do it, any business can do it, and for quite a small amount of money. It starts at £300 plus the VAT. But it's just running through the 5 controls for cybersecurity and making sure you've got them in place. Going right up to the other end of it, where you've got to then show that what you've said in the basic is actually implemented. You have a full penetration test and everything. And that's something that business can do quite cost effectively. That can mean the big difference between not being prepared and being prepared. It takes a couple of hours if you know what you're doing, if you're tech savvy, or there's people like us out there who are tech savvy and have more than happy to help companies with it. But I think I've heard that the States are rolling out something similar, companies to agree to a minimum standard of security just to help things. I mean, we've had one big financial institute push, some company called St. James's Place. They do wealth management. All their partners are self-employed, but everybody in that company, from a one-man band to be in a company of, say, 10, 20 people, all pushing the same product, have all now got to be Cyber Essentials Plus. They've had to go into the top level of it just to show that they are serious about cybersecurity. And that, for me, more confidence in that company going that step than it would do someone even bigger who's not pushed on cybersecurity. So the Cyber Essentials scheme is something very key to businesses over here, but they need to implement it. They can't, again, as they keep doing, ignoring it. And about the stats earlier, the 36%, I think it was, that's only reported instances. That figure should probably be double easily. It's going to be in the high 60s, 70s for actual stuff. The stuff that's not reported that we're interested in finding out about.
And I think one of the biggest things is that there's no one switch. You can't just like install a firewall, or you can't just, because there's so many different applications that come into play with all this. And I think that's why we're having such a hard time wrapping our head around this, because this is a cultural change that has to happen in every single organization. And when's the last time we really had to have a cultural change? I hate to say this, but it was almost with the sexual harassment, the way things were in the 50s, with that's okay to, hey, honey and sweetie and all that kind of stuff. And then, everybody had to go through training and realized, okay, that's not appropriate. But that's really the last cultural change that we had to go through with in an organization. So
yeah, I think the COVID lockdowns helped somewhat get companies thinking about security, not to the extent they need to be, but because of that shift to home working, they've now had to put more emphasis on it, which is, again, where having a good IT company behind you comes in, that they can advise on what to do correctly for the security aspect.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. Very good point. COVID definitely helped. Give us a little kickstart, but now we need to keep picking up the pieces and, moving forward. So
yeah,
exactly that. It's got to keep pushing it forward.
Yeah. Well, this was really, really helpful. Thank you so much from over the pond, and I appreciate your time, everybody. And this will be out in a couple of weeks, and I would love to have you guys back again if you want to talk about something else.
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Cheers.